All right, welcome to another episode of Closers or Losers. It's been 2 or 3 weeks that Matt and I have not done one together. We've all been traveling kind of all over the place. We've been doing them with different people in the company and different clients.
Yeah.
Matthew, what's going on here? We had a big 5-day challenge last week. Heard it was somewhat successful.
It went okay.
Went okay?
We got new clients coming through, so it's not just going to be us two talking to nobody.
16,000 people registered for that bad boy. It was a great 5-day virtual event, how to become a top 1% salesperson. So we're back in action. Today, we always take questions that salespeople go to search engines asking or go to YouTube asking, and we typically will use those as what we're going to cover here on the podcast. And I think one thing I want to cover, and we've kind of covered this here and there over the last year and differences, but I want to cover it and mainly focus on it, is let's go over about 4 to 5 high pressure sales tactics that you just want to avoid. They just don't work. And unfortunately, a lot of sales trainers are still training salespeople to use them. And a lot of those sales trainers haven't even sold for decades. So let's kind of go over like the 4 top old school sales techniques that you probably want to stay away from unless you love triggering sales resistance and getting tons of objections and slapped in the face. What's your biggest one?
I think like logic traps.
Okay, you used to be big in those when you were a client a long time ago. Tell everybody what that means.
Logic trap is just where you ask a series of questions that only has like one logical outcome, so you're making the person feel stupid.
Okay,
essentially, like like what do you think about? Like, it's just walking them down a pathway where they can only have one answer, and it's like it's a just bit disingenuous because like they have to answer that way whether they believe it or not, because otherwise they're just going to be so. If you're asking questions about colors and then it's all about like, what color is this? It's green. What color is this? It's blue. What color is this? It's like, well, if this is blue and this is green, then what's this? And then they're going to have to answer, so that's kind of a shitty one.
But what does it do psychologically to the prospect? It's not just you. It's not that it just doesn't work, but what does it do psychologically to the prospect when you're asking questions that are basically forcing them to give you the answer you want?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you end up like the outcome is that you get tons of refunds.
Yeah.
So like you'll make the sale as long as someone isn't like, if someone is more of a like, doesn't like confrontation, isn't super confident, then they will buy, but they will then refund. Or they'll find some sort of like reason.
So when you leave,
or hang up or something.
The pressure, the pressure goes away, and now they're just like, oh, I'm just going to cancel because I don't have to talk to him again.
Exactly. And then because all the really hard closing tactics were developed in person.
Yeah. Because
in person, you can intimidate someone into buying.
Right? You can, but I think consumers are smarter these days.
But that's where they all came from. Like the takeaway close. Well, you're probably not right for this anyway. This car is too nice for you anyway. If someone saw you driving this car, like, they just wouldn't believe it. They think you stole it.
Yeah.
Like all that kind of stuff. And then I think false scarcity is another one as well.
Yeah. Tell me. Okay, so let's go over false. Well, actually, before we go over to false scarcity, I want to focus a little bit more on these manipulative questions, because I think it's one of the biggest techniques that a lot of salespeople have been forced to learn. And I sometimes as a salesperson, when you're trained something by supposedly you thought they were an expert, you just kind of accept it as fact, right? So you're trained that, hey, sales is a numbers game, like keep calling more leads, get more no's so you get to the yes. And what I always interpreted that to mean from the sales trainer is basically what they were saying to me is, what I'm training you doesn't really work that well. So you're just going to have to work a lot harder. And I was always like, that doesn't give me really much of a competitive advantage, just working more. Like, why do I want to work more? It doesn't make any sense. I want to focus on each conversation and my technique. So a lot of salespeople have been taught how to ask these manipulative questions. There's something in there, I always used to hear that says a salesperson like, hey, if you can get them to say yes 7 times in the presentation, there's a 72.7% more of a chance they're going to buy. And
so fake.
I bought that as like reality in the beginning, but then I started to dig into it with actually this, you never heard this, but I dug into this with one of my professors, a behavioral scientist, and we like looked for where that study was that actually proves that. And did you know there's no study that actually shows that? It was actually a study by a sales training company that gave the study that if you get them to say yes 7 times, I'm like, oh, isn't that interesting? The ones that are training it did a study on it. And that was actually back in the 1940s, 1950s. And ever since that, most sales trainers have basically took that phrase and just thought it was the gospel and put it in their book. And it just kind of kept going when there's literally no evidence to show that that's even true at all.
Never made sense to me anyway. I think that it assumes people are stupid.
Yeah. Well, it's like when I see somebody selling on stage, right? And they sit there and they say something to the audience, like they ask them a question and they say yes and yes, yes and yes, and they make them say yes. And I'm just like, your prospects in the audience have heard this for decades. They're not stupid. Like just because you're saying yes, say yes and yes, to a question doesn't mean that they agree with you. They're just kind of going through the motions. And I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So bad. People feel like they're sold. So you got to be, you like a lot of times in the sales process, when I was in the trenches, I would ask questions where I wanted them to say no. And sales would be like, you can't get them to say no. And I'm like, well, I make 10 times more than you. What do you mean? The proof's in the paycheck. The proof's in the commission check. Like, what are you talking about? Oh, you get them to say yes all the times, but you make like 90% less than me. How's that working out for you? So instead of saying, are you open? I might say, well, are you opposed to having the conversation? No, I'm not opposed. See, I want them to say no. I don't want them to say yes. There's so many instances where I'd rather have them say no that actually leads them to saying yes.
Yeah. I think a lot of it comes from the old boiler room sales techniques where they were like, prospects are idiots and let's try and screw them over. And it's all like that. It's boiler room and Wolf of Wall Street stuff where like it's just, it's not selling. It's like manipulation.
100%.
And it's like asking a loaded question. Like if I ask you, so like, have you stopped cheating on your exams? Right. So it's like, well, yeah, it's like, okay, so you cheat on your exams.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Like that's a logic. It's a trap. And so like you can use those types of things in sales, like, but like it's creating a really combative and adversarial environment, which is like, which I think can obviously be successful.
If you play the numbers game and work your butt off.
Yeah. However, like it's an unpleasant way of doing it. It doesn't create good client relationships. I remember there was a team that we came, a really, really good high ticket fitness business that asked us to come in and train their team. And the previous sales trainer was I actually did his course years ago, very, very hard closing. Like, I mean, I've never seen hard closing tactics like this. It was buy or die. Like that was the buy or die was the mentality.
Yeah.
You never stopped. You never, ever, ever hung up the phone. You had to keep selling until they hung up on you. No one was allowed to do follow-ups. So there was like, he taught 0 follow-up. You either burn the lead or make the sale.
Wow.
Right. That was what they were taught.
Probably gave their brand a really good reputation.
Oh man, it was terrible. So they had a list of like 8,000 previous opt-ins and they were calling these people like weekly. It was like the people hated them so much. And all the people who didn't buy had such nasty things to say about them that even though their program was actually fantastic and like the methodology of coaching they did was so nurturing and like good and like high quality that their sales was doing them such a disservice and all their salespeople were quitting because they hated it. And then when we came in, we gave them a totally different way. And they were like, oh my God, this is so much nicer.
You don't know what you it's emotionally draining. Like most personalities cannot sell that way because they don't feel comfortable, because as a human being, we are not built to high pressure other people and try to force them into doing other things. We're not built as a human to do that. There's like you're talking a few percent that he can even sell that way and keep doing that. Like it's very, very, it burns most people out. And that's why most sales trainers that come into an industry, they might have 100 salespeople they're training and 2 or 3 of them will pick it up and they'll do good. And the other 97 just can't do it because that's
they're told their mindset's weak and that's why they're not making sales. The moment that your sales coach tells you that your mindset's the problem, just run away screaming because
Yeah, that means what they're training you doesn't really work that well, and so that's their excuse.
If the process should work, whether you're hungover, whether you've just been dumped, whether you're happy, whether you're sad, you do
whether
the
you're
process,
fat,
it works.
whether you're skinny,
slumps are a myth,
short,
in my opinion. That's how to go. And actually, what do you think on that? I think slumps are a myth. I think that they're just,
Yeah. I think if like we don't, like our clients don't have slumps because the sales process, like from the start to finish, they know where to go, right? They know how to get the prospect to let their guard down where they become open. They know how to get them to emotionally open up and go below the surface. It's very hard to have slumps when you actually have the right skills. You only have slumps because you don't have the right skills and you're winging it and your personality selling. That causes slumps for sure.
Yeah, if you're selling with your personality and you're having a down time, like then you're gonna, you know what I mean? Like, I just like I never understood it because like I remember I was speaking to someone on a podcast once and they were saying how important mindset is to sales, and I said I just have to disagree. Like, oh, this, and I was like, but like, dude, like if I didn't have to like pump myself up to kick a door in Afghanistan and go to war, like if I didn't have to like have all my chakras in alignment and do a cold plunge and a cold shower in the morning and then meditate and touch grass for 15 minutes and look at the sun, I don't see why I would have to do that to have that a conversation with a person. And they just said, well, that's because you have a good mindset. I said, that is such a straw man bullshit, like lazy argument. Yeah. Like it means it's like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If everything is mindset, then everything is mindset.
It's so true because as a neurosurgeon, is it your mindset or your skill set that caused you to have a successful brain surgery? It's your skill set. It's the process that you follow. The same is true in sales. When the prospect answers the phone and says hello, I hate to tell you this. If you don't know what to say, if you don't know what to ask, and especially if you don't know how to use your tone to get them to lower their guard, all that personal development, which I love personal development, all those cold plunges, all the journaling, all the meditating goes out the door. If you don't know how to get that prospect to lower their guard and emotionally open up, that is your skill level that determines that. It has nothing to do with your mindset, period.
Yeah.
Crazy. Exactly. Okay. So let's go to the second thing. You said something about false something. What was the second thing? Some technique.
Like a false dichotomy.
What was, I don't even know what that means.
So it's where you present two extremes.
Okay.
So like the only option is the extremes. So like you're either with us or against us. Right. And so like, you're not really talking about reality. You're or like even the semblance of reality. It's like, if you don't do this program, you're going to be broken down in a ditch. If you do this program, it's going to be the greatest thing that ever happened.
If you don't buy this life insurance policy, your family's going to die tomorrow and you're going to have nothing, or just whatever. So just like scare tactics. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Sort of, scare.
Which that's basically just like manipulation tactics. Like most people aren't dumb enough to fall for that anymore. Like they know power of the internet, social media, they know have many choices to choose exactly what you're selling.
Oh, there's also false scarcity. So like, like pretend action. Like I really don't like action taker discounts.
Yeah.
Especially if they're like pretend, like a lot of businesses do it. Hey, if you're to act today, because like, if it's not true, I don't think you should do it. So
I think most prospects see through it these days because they've heard it so much.
I think that's true. I think it's really hard to work into a sales process because if you don't do it early, then if you do it at the end, then it just seems like a really poor sales tactic.
It seems like a sales tactic. That's what
you have to do it at the beginning. Hey, just so you know that at the end of this call, we are going to be doing this. And then you trigger huge amounts of sales resistance. Yeah. Because now they go, oh, I'm in a sales process.
Yeah.
So I just don't know how you do it effectively, and it's almost never true because every time every time I've been in a sales call where it's happened, I go, so you're telling me that if I say, call me tomorrow, right, then you're not going to give me that price. And I go, because you're in a tough spot. Because if you do give me the price, then I won't believe you and I won't buy. So you're in a tough spot, buddy. Right? Like, because you can't start the relationship off with a lie. If you do that, like, then you're doing everything wrong.
I agree. All right. So I want to talk about another one. And this kind of rolls into it. I think a lot of people have been taught that they need to, what's the word that they call at the beginning of the call? It's not we would call it like a status frame, which ours would be complete.
Like setting an agenda.
Yeah, setting an agenda. So they get on the call and they're like, hey, just so you know, like I'm going to ask you the way that this call's going to go. So they just kind of force their way into it. I love when they try to do that on an A-type And they're just like, well, F you.
Yeah.
You're like,
No,
yeah, you're not going to tell me what to do. But they're like, the way this call will go is I'm going to ask you a series of questions. And depending on your answers, it's going to blah, 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 blah. And then when we get to the end of the call, if let's say we're a good fit for you and we feel like you're a good fit for our company, I can show you how to sign up, or I can show you how to do this.
Yeah.
Sound fair? Or is that fair enough?
Fair enough.
Now, the problem is most prospects will agree with that. Now, most will be like, yeah, that's fair. But in their back of their mind, what did they just do? They're
salesperson.
They're going to defend themselves now. So that means you're saying, here's my agenda. And at the end, you're going to say yes or no or whatever. Or if it's a good fit, say yes. If we feel like you're a good fit for us, we'll move forward. But the problem is now the prospect's going to emotionally shut down. And when you ask those questions, they're going to stay surface level with you because they feel if they open up, you're going to use it against them to try to force them to buy, and they might not want to buy.
And people argue against that. And I just don't understand how you could, because buyers, they keep their cards close to their chest. Like if I'm genuinely going to buy something, like you don't run into a car yard running around, oh my God, it's the perfect car. I've been looking for this my whole life. Because why? Because you just have a pretty good idea the salesperson is going to jack the price up, right? Or they know that you don't have to negotiate because you really, 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 really want it. Yes. Right. So like if that's the context of the conversation that you're having, which it is because it's a sales conversation, then like by you leading with that, you're automatically, they're going to go, oh, I don't want you to see my cards because like now I need it because I need a negotiating position in case this is right. And if you don't see all their cards, you're not going to know like what they actually need, what they want, what they're looking for, and then be able to have that conversation.
Well, if they stay surface level, they're never going to emotionally open up. And what's the biggest emotional driver in a human being that causes them to want to change? Pain. And if you can't help them go below the surface and tell you what their pain is and how it's affecting them, they will more than likely probably not buy, right? So we would still do, we call it a status frame, NPQ status frame, but we make it more neutral. And we're like, really the first part of this call, it's pretty basic. We even downplay it. It's pretty basic. When we downplay it, they lower their guard. When we upplay it, they raise their guard, right? It's just called mismatching. It's just the way the brain works. So really this call is pretty basic. It's more for us to find out, and let's say that you're selling, let's say business consulting or something to companies. It's really for us to find out kind of, what your operations and kind of systems look like now that you've put in. And I would say the results you're getting from those compared to maybe where you're wanting them to be, to see what the gap looks like. And then towards the end of the call, if you feel like, hey, this might be what you're looking for, we can talk about, possible next steps. Would that help you guys? Might be what you're looking for. We can talk about possible next steps. No one is ever going to say, no, we can't talk about possible next steps. See, it's a neutral word that I put in there that keeps their guard down.
And now, but it also makes them feel like there's no pressure. They don't have to do anything. Like you're not saying like, hey, the call, you're going to be asked for a yes or a no. We don't do maybe. It's like, come on, dickhead. It's like, it's just such a pretend thing. And like my argument was always that is something that a salesperson does because they're trying to control a situation they ultimately can't control.
Prospect can always say no.
They can always say no. They can say maybe. They can say tomorrow. They can say in 4 days. They can say in 3 years. They can say anything that they want to say because they're human beings with their own agency. You have no control over that. So to try and manufacture control is just you trying to like sort out your own ego issues.
Well, all it does is trigger more sales resistance where they shut down. Now, the only thing you can control is getting the prospect to lower their guard and building a gap, right? Because now they're more emotionally open up because they don't feel the pressure, right? So now they feel more comfortable in going over what's really going on, the root cause, how it's affecting them. And by default, they start to build a gap in their mind from your question and tone. And that the gap gets so big that it builds so much urgency in their mind that they feel like the only way to solve that pain is to buy from you right then and there. And you don't have to pressure them. They persuaded themselves. I can tell you which of those ways will make you 5 times more money for sure. All right. Absolutely. Now here's another one that I love. And as part of that is the one where they say, and the end of the call, if you feel we're a good fit for you and we feel you're a good fit for our company. See, the problem is just like you said, most of your prospects don't believe. If you get to the end of that call or sales process and like, I'm ready to buy, here's my credit card. You're like, no, ma'am, I'm sorry. You're just not a good fit for us. I have to turn your money away. Nobody.
There are companies like that. Like if you want consulting from McKinsey, or if you want, there are like, or if you want one-on-one sales training with you, if someone came to me, I would go like, hey man, make the argument.
Yeah.
Like that is literally what I would say, because like, I don't want to sell it. I don't need to sell it. You don't have the time to do it. So it's like, hey man, create the argument. But there's such rare occasions, you know what I mean? That like, it's just not a replicatable sales process. And if it's not true, I just don't see the point in doing it. One of the best things about sales, and I've said this a few times, is that it's a really freeing experience because you never have to lie. Like there's no need to ever lie to a prospect ever, because like if it's going to work, it's going to work. And so like, it's a very freeing experience being able to tell people the truth all the time, but also like hold up the mirror to them and show them like, this is the result of your current decision-making.
Yeah. I mean, they're the ones that have the problem. See, salespeople, they just got it all in reverse. Like we train you how to get your prospects to do all the work and how to get them to sell themselves and overcome their own objections, where everybody else, you're getting trained that you got to do all the work. You got to do all the selling, persuading. That just gets exhausting. It's just not very persuasive. So we want to flip that script. And because we're the ones that have the solution to solve their problems. I mean, they're coming to us because they have problems. We can solve them and get them where they want to be. So you got to start raising your status and start viewing yourself as more of the expert who can get them where they want to be. It just changes the ballgame. Now, one last thing. Here's what I think the fourth one is, and you tell me what you think. Most salespeople have been trained that they believe that to make a sale, you really have to be good at your closing techniques, because they think if you say, do you want the red one or the blue one? That's when the prospect decides to buy. When you ask them the option close, that's when they make the decision.
And did you know that 51% of people will choose red if you say it first? Did you know?
I love that. Oh, I love that. It's so funny because I'm just like, well, what about all the people when you say, do you want the red or blue? And they're like, well, I'm not really sure we need either right now. I need to think it over. See, that's not when they decide to buy. If they say, I want the red one, that means that they had already decided to buy from the discovery call and building a gap, or they were a laydown sale. So they had already decided they wanted to buy. And it's not because of your closing question. They'd already decided to buy before that.
Yeah. Like, I think one of the problems, so they're trying to make it easy. Like, I understand the thought process behind like doing those like option closers or the puppy dog close or whatever, all those closes.
The trial close, the Benjamin Franklin close.
Right. Like they're all decide to like create a series of questions that have like a predictable end state. Right. And like, I understand it from like a simplicity standpoint. However, the only problem is like, you're just taking out the fact that like the person can just say whatever they want. So like it doesn't do anything. Like it's just it's all pretend. It's like kabuki theater. It's like pretending. Yeah. You want red or blue, black or white, up or down, left or right? Yay! Yeah. Okay, cool. Visa or MasterCard. I'm not giving you money.
Okay, so do you want to pay Visa or MasterCard? I didn't say I was ready to buy. See, now you just triggered the problem with saying like the assumptive close is they've already if they've already decided to buy, they're just going to go with it. Oh, I'll pay with Visa. But if they haven't decided to buy, now you're just going to trigger sales resistance because like, oh, I didn't decide to buy it. Now their guard's up and now it's hard to overcome their objections. But if I just simply lean in and say, do you feel like this could be the answer for you? I'm not triggering any sales resistance because I didn't say, I'm not assuming they even want it. I'm asking. Now, if I built the gap right, I don't think I ever got to the end of a sales call and asked that question. They're like, nope, this is horrible. I would never.
Literally never happened.
It's always, yes, I do. Well, hold on. Why do you feel like it is? Or yes, I do, but, and then they tell me an objection. Sure. But
also there's another layer behind why that's really effective, because I've thought about this a lot. And when you give people like binary choices, then like it's very hard to progress the conversation if they go outside that binary. If it's red or blue and they say, well, because like now you're in a roadblock. So now what you have to do is you have to backpedal the conversation. Yeah. So you have to go backwards to then move forwards, where like the way that we do it is like, would that be appropriate, or how would you like to proceed from here? So every single option they have is available to them, and every single option that they can choose is a natural progression for the next conversation. So like hey, how would you like to proceed from here? Yeah, listen, this sounds really good. I just want to kind of go ahead and do X, Y, and Z and speak to these people. Okay. And then what we do is we handle our objection the way that we're taught. And then we go, and how would you like to proceed from here?
And we
And then
loop
they
back
can
around.
choose,
Exactly.
they can choose to progress to a sale or progress to the next concern. And so it's always a flowing, whereas if you do it the old way, I know because I've done it thousands of times, the moment they give an objection, you go something like, okay, so are we going ahead? And they go, no, and then it's like, okay, now I've got to backpedal and I've got to now justify why I keep talking.
Because all you've done is their guards up now, and it's very hard. So when we train you, like when we help you build the gap, even if they have a concern, because that gap is so big now in their mind from where they are compared to where they want to be, that it's like they're searching for you to help them overcome the concern. So when we learn how to clarify what's behind the concern, what it even means, because most salespeople don't even know, they just guess and try to go into rebuttal mode and hope and pray they got the right one. Because the meaning of this is too expensive could mean 10 different things to 10 different prospects. It could mean there's no way they could ever get the money. It could mean that they don't have the money for 3 days. It could mean that it's more expensive compared to the current vendor they're with. It could mean that they got another quote from a competing company. It could mean 10 different things. And if you just like go into your rebuttal without finding out what they even, hold on, too expensive, or how do you mean by too expensive? Well, I mean, I was talking with this other company and they said they could do it for, see, now I know what they mean by too expensive. And now I know where to go with that objection, right? But if you're trying to force them into like an assumptive close or an option close and you trigger sales resistance, it's really hard for them to open up and let you help them overcome the concern. Whereas with us, they're just completely open. They view us as like working with them to try to get them to a certain point and solve problems. And now it's really easy to help them overcome the concern. That's the difference.
Yeah, exactly. And just
top 4. Do you got another one on your mind? Those are top 4.
No, I just think like the whole vibe of the call, depending on, I think old school sales are very like I think solution dropping is one that I would say is a kind of an old school tactic that really doesn't work. Like the moment someone says, oh, we're looking for more leads. Oh, yeah, that's great because, we get our clients tons of leads and, we're the best at getting leads, and it's like, oh, let me just pick up that solution that I dropped there and put that back in my pocket.
It's the moment the prospect gives you a problem, you're like, oh yeah, lots of our prospects have problems. Let me tell you, we solved that. And then you go right into pitch mode.
Yeah, exactly. And that actually induces early pitches. There are a couple of things that will induce an early pitch I love when I review a sales call and I hear someone's solution drop early. And I go, all right, so I pause it there and I go, did they ask, oh, tell me more about that? And then you end up pitching at minute 5. They're like, yeah. I was like, maybe don't do that.
It's over.
Like it's very difficult to make a sale when you're, because then you've got to justify why you're not going to go into it because you're the one who started the conversation.
Yeah, just because they tell you a problem, that's usually just the surface of what's really going on. You got to really like clarify and probe and go below the surface and get them to emotionally open up, not just what the problem is. Any salesperson can find a problem. Good salespeople can find the root cause of the problem, like what's causing it. Top 1% salespeople can also find both of those, but then how the problem's affecting them personally. And that's where the emotions come out. And that's when selling becomes easy. Now, you guys want to start acquiring those skills to get your prospects in what we call their emotional state by triggering what are called emotional drivers to get them to want to change. Your first step, make sure you go to our free Facebook group. We're going to give you some nibbles.
SalesRevolution.pro.
SalesRevolution.pro. Go to SalesRevolution.pro. I'm running across the room here. And then go to Barnes & Noble. There should be a link here. Make sure you get you don't have to get it. Unless you wanted to sell more of what you sell. But if you want to sell more to make more money, you go to Barnes & Noble's website. There should be a link on here, The New Model of Selling. Get it from the Barnes & Noble website there. And then this book is a Wall Street Journal best-selling book or something?
So.
Right now? They put the new banners on. These are the old ones, but
we just bought 300 because for next month, I'm pretty sure all 3.0 members will get the book for free.
Oh, we're giving that the higher end, the high ticket clients in that. So yeah, go to The New Model of Selling to an Unsellable Generation, written by me and my co-author, Jerry Acuff, who's the CEO of Delta Point. And we give you some tactical training. My biggest complaint about sales books, and I've read like almost 1,400 in the last 23 years, is that most of them are just theory and they just kind of rehash the same thing 12 different ways. and you don't really learn that much after. So we wanted to put like tactical questions here and why you wanted to use your tone in certain instances and little nuances and just tactical training that will help you. Actually, you read it and you go out and sell more. So go buy the book here if you want to sell more at Barnes & Noble, and then free Facebook group, salesrevolution.pro. Matt, good to have you back on here. We will be back live here in a few days again. Thanks, everybody.
All right, guys. Bye.
Hey guys, if you enjoy these, here's another you can watch right over here, right over here. Join our free Sales Revolution group. Click the link below, join us, and we're gonna help you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you real soon.